At some point in everyone's life, they have gotten involved in someone else's life, whether that was intentionally or unintentionally. People should know when to mind their own business. Gossain wrote in The Art and Science of Minding Your Own Business that knowing when to get involved in other people's business, or not, is an art. Not everyone knows when they need to get involved or not, and that has been something that can greatly affect relationships. There are times when we can feel anxious, stressed, or discouraged, or even depressed, so we rely on others to give advice, and that is not always the best way to go about anything. Giving that advice can greatly affect your relationship with that person. Gossain wrote in The Art and Science of Minding Your Own Business that we feel qualified to give advice, and we feel an amplified sense of responsibility. But there is a big difference between feeling qualified and being qualified. Getting involved in a person's life is a huge responsibility. If you give someone advice and that doesn't work out, you risk ruining your relationship with that person because they aren't going to trust you for you to give them advice again. It's better to think before you act, and that really needs to be put into practice. When talking to people not involved, ask the person who is seeking advice if they would allow you to bring that person into the problem. It is uncomfortable when someone that you don't know finds out all the things that you don't want them to know because you trusted someone and they spread that information along to someone else. It's better to learn who you can really trust. Being able to give advice is a great thing when you know what you're doing, but sometimes you just need to ask yourself if it's necessary. Gossain wrote in The Art and Science of Minding Your Own Business to not offer advice unless you're specifically asked for it. Giving advice when it is not needed is unnecessary and can affect your relationship with that person because they didn't want that advice and you're just going to make them angry. Sometimes it is necessary to offer someone advice, though. Sasson wrote in his Success Consciousness blog on self-improvement and achieving success that you owe it to yourself not to let anyone manipulate you or make you feel bad. So, the person, let's say, I'm the person who's feeling bad, and I asked a friend to give me advice. I want that advice because I don't want to feel bad, and I know that I can trust this person. But people really need to know when to stop giving that advice. They need to ask themselves if getting involved is necessary. Will it be a problem for the other person? Is it worth it? And how are you saying these things? They all need to be carefully considered in seeing if you need to get involved in another person's life. Today wrote in When Is It Really None of Your Business that the person getting involved needs to know when to stop. Giving too much advice is not good, especially if it's bad advice. We also need to see how we would feel if someone gets involved in our business. Many times it wouldn't be something that anyone else was wanting. Austin wrote in Emma that Emma was more likely to have done more harm to herself than good to all the others she was trying to help because she interfered. Emma should have asked herself how she would feel if someone were to interfere into her life. Would that make her happy, or would it lead her down the wrong path? Because Emma tried to give advice to one of her best friends because she liked how she looked with this other man. And the man was actually in love with Emma, but because she was so focused on Harriet and giving Harriet advice, Harriet turned down a man that would truly love her for a man that was in love with Emma and would never love Harriet because her friend, didn't have it was Emma's friend's Harriet. She didn't have any money, so the guy wouldn't love her. So put yourself in another person's shoes is the best way to figure out if you should give that person advice. Asking for and giving advice is not wrong, but it needs to be done in moderation. So making sure your advice is wanted and if it's helpful is important to helping. That also goes for asking for advice. Do you really need advice, or are you just asking for it because you're worried about what people think? I have heard some people ask for advice on whether to break up with whoever they're dating. That is something that needs to be decided by yourself. Do you want to hurt someone's feelings over what another person thinks? The person giving advice also might not be the most trustworthy person that you know. When dealing with your relationship, listen to what your heart and brain is saying to receive the best results. You shouldn't care really too much about what other people think, or that's how you're just going to live throughout your life, and you're never going to be truly happy. So there are times to get involved in other people's business and times when not to. Differentiating between those two is a skill that many people do not have, but it is a learnable skill. It's a skill that I believe everyone should know. So it's also a needed skill. Knowing what you need, knowing what you need and when you are going to need it, the advice is something that you also need to learn. Because you can't just rely on what other people think of you. Learning that skill means you won't have to rely on people as much, and you can come up with your own conclusions. It is not always best to rely on others, even though it is sometimes necessary. So gaining that knowledge affects the outcome, so that you can have yourself, someone like you can get the best advice and from someone else, or you can find that advice on your own, so you don't even need it from someone else. What you need to do is go out and see if someone you know is really going to be your most trustworthy, wanted person to give you good advice. If you know that person is going to give you bad advice, why would you even listen to them in the first place? So, I don't know. It's better to listen to what your own heart and mind are telling you. So the way you would learn to go out and receive advice would be, is this person giving me good advice? Or is this person not going to give me good advice, so I shouldn't listen to them? You gain these knowledgeable things through experience. Talking so long. So, through your own experience and through others. Because, some people might have a bad experience with some person, like with dating some person. You're going to want to listen to how their experience went through, so you can decide, should I really look at this person as a potential partner? I don't know. That's what I think you should do. And also, if you're giving advice, you need to determine if this is good advice or if it isn't. And you can do this through many ways. I mean, you can look it up. You can talk to this person about your advice and ask them if this is something they would want to do. So it is also good to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Would you want to be receiving this advice? Say, if you were dating someone and someone told you should break up with them, but you really liked them, would you still follow their advice? I mean, it's kind of different. Like, if they're not a good person, do you really want to be listening to them? Is the thing. I mean, are they really good advice givers? So this should all be gained through experience, through your experience and your own. Should you give advice, and should you receive that advice?